world blind. Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm
Hey, what is going on, everybody? So welcome to the Sixers chat. Obviously, I got my first time here on the channel. Sean Barnard, what's going on, man?
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, man. A little bit of the sad time of year with a post-Sixers season settle in, but always ready to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so far, like I said, I've actually talked about this with my boy Mitch when we have our Sixers Top podcast. Honestly, like going into the next year, like I said, I have zero expectations. It's kind of what we not expect every single year, but overall, I mean, I wanted your thoughts so far overall. Like, have you seen something been a lot different with the Sixers? Because for me, I would have think we could have done more, but well, of course, fortunately, Elden Ring kind of handcuffed us in some aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you never want to see another second round exit. I think that's all what we did not want to see this year. And this definitely was a season which the chips were in the middle. They were going all in and wanted to contend for a championship. And frankly, they weren't that far off. I mean, it is a little discouraging to watch this Celtics team kind of getting under the rug by this Heat team. So I guess not as legitimate as maybe we hoped. But either way, they pushed the Celtics 2-7. A couple things go differently, and just kind of the way that things went down is what frustrates me the most about the season's exit. Those games 6 and 7 hurt. So yeah, I am disappointed. I think things could have gone different, and I wish that was the case, but we're here and facing the same problems this offseason.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, unfortunately, with news coming about James Harden wanting a mask, because let's be real, he could get it elsewhere. Because I think overall, I think we need, I would say, a different complementary piece to kind of like how Embiid needs that one guy to really take that load off his shoulders and actually let him go to post. Then again, also that depends on the coaching scheme, because there's a few guys in particular I do want to see, kind of leading this team. Obviously, Sam Cassell is one of them. Monty Williams, definitely Nick Nurse. I've been hearing a lot. There's been a lot of rumors and reports that we might be pushing towards Nick Nurse a lot, especially of how young some of these guys are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Nick Nurse. That would be my personal first choice. It's tough. It's competitive for all the coaches right now, and there's way better jobs available for the free agent coaches in traditional sense. When you think about the Milwaukee Bucks are fresh off a championship, have a 2-time MVP in Giannis and a core ready to contend now. You got the Phoenix Suns with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. The Sixers as well is still an appealing job. You got Joel Embiid, the reigning MVP of the league, Tyrese Maxey, an exciting young piece, and a team that isn't that far away from contending. So it's not as much of like there's good options for a coach. And I think that's something to be kept in mind as these guys shop around. The more the Sixers take their time and allowing the pieces to fall into place, they could risk losing out on the guy. And I think Nick Nurse is pretty much universally regarded as the top candidate out there. So I would love for them to jump on it, but there are some good names beyond that as well.
Oh, yeah. And then we've entered Frank Vogel. Yeah, I'm not kind of too high on that, but I mean, it wouldn't hurt to get this guy a look. Obviously, sour jersey native, I know that better than anybody who actually still lives in the area, might I add. So it's kind of nice to get a different look at it. But I think overall, I've always had criticism, and I've done actually surprisingly enough, what Sixers content creator hasn't done it. Kind of did a video kind of really explaining Embiid is just lazy and complacent. Ever since he won that MVP, like he just turned it off for whatever reason. And it's just like, dude, you're getting bided by guys like 6'11", like 200, like say 50 pounds in the post. It's like, what are we doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, it just seems like he's so weak-minded to the point. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, I mean, I think scheme plays a big part in that. That's one of the things I'm most excited about for coaches. It feels like there weren't enough clean opportunities to create looks for Joel Embiid. It was a lot of the Doc Rivers offense is basically Joel Embiid, go get yours. And to an extent, you want your star players to be able to deliver on that. This isn't an excuse for him in that regard, but there's a lot of times where he's got multiple guys being thrown his way. And it's really hard in today's NBA to be building around a big man. So I'm excited to see some changes with that. But yeah, it was frustrating the way things went out. For me, the defensive side of the ball is what I was especially disappointed with in Game 7, particularly the effort just not being there. And that's always what I kind of hang my hat on of why I love Joel Embiid as a player, as even in the days where it doesn't feel like he has it, he's still such a force defensively, changing the game, making his impact. But that wasn't how things ended this season. And to me, that is the most frustrating part about him. And it's also kind of crazy to see him go from kind of the highest of the highest to the lowest, so that he did get that MVP. And now the pressure's on him more than ever to rebound off what ends up being a pretty embarrassing postseason exit and a struggle like that. So this is going to be a really telling offseason for Joel Embiid and what his mindset is.
Absolutely. And I've O'Shea, he talked about, listen, not just scheme fit. I think he needs to get in better shape, because remember, you go back to 2019 after that loss. Well, even though I know that still stings, but he facts like, I want to get better shape. Honestly, it's hard to buy into what he was selling. I think he was kind of spilling a lot of BS, so to speak. And you see it too. I mean, with his weight, you can see like it was hindrance on his stamina, his endurance, and a lot of times his health. We've seen, playing with the sprained MCL, I think last year, a couple years, torn meniscus. I mean, there's a lot of stuff he's got to battle. It's, as much, and I love the Sixers, man. I've been filling this team for over the last 2 decades. It's just like it. I want consistency. That's what it's like. It's not that hard to ask for consistency. It's like, it's not like where you saw like AI. Well, the only dude that was actually healthy out of that 0-1 team, because everyone else was kind of banged up here and there. I really do like Maxey. I really, the dude has been the dude's been nothing but short of spectacular since, let's be real, the fact he fell to our laps was impressive, to say the least, for a guy that, people say, oh, the dude's not a great 3-point shooter in college, like, and all this yada, yada, yada. Last couple of years, I mean, has been a really nice, consistent 3-point shooter. And now, yes, what I do want to see is more, even though you try to play a little bit more like scrappy defense of his size, where he's like 6'3", something like that, like an average size for a point guard. I do want to, or actually shooting guard, shall I say, because we do need a better point guard play to help complement Maxey, get that looks, like I said, even get into try to get looks with Embiid in the post. And like I said, depends on who the coach could be. Now, I feel like for me, I think that's where a guy like Nick Nurse can help, because you see how young that Raptors team was in 2019, except for Kawhi Leonard, and Kyle Lowry, but they were pretty much a very young team, really some really nice pieces. And the one thing that Nick Nurse had really done well is adjusting. How many times we keep freaking yelling adjustments for the last 3 years with him? Jeez. But yeah, that's really leave it off with that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also another thing that Nick Nurse has done really well as a coach is defending Joel Embiid. He's one of the best at game planning against the Sixers. So having that within the walls of the organization and giving that into Joel's ear of, this is why I did this to you, to take this away from you, I think could be really helpful to his development, because I honestly think a lot of the wall that Joel hit was like kind of him, I don't want to say being figured out by defenses, but there were just adjustments made that he didn't seem to be ready for. And having a little bit more of that inside tell of what teams are looking for, game planning against him, could be really helpful in him. I think that he, like I said, this is going to be an offseason full of reflection for Joel Embiid. He has to realize that, but I think there's few guys better than Nick Nurse at picking that out, realizing it, and just finding a way to kind of have him mentally ahead of things, because I still think that's the biggest leap that he needs to take is processing the game, getting to his spots, and figuring things out.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like, and look over the last few years, we had to deal with the Ben Simmons bullshit that we had to go through. And that was, let's be real, that's kind of been rough. And, Doc not wanted, and, that's where I think a lot of times where the lack of development comes from is, I'm not a Doc, I've actually talked to a lot of other people. Like Doc's been kind of still stuck in his way. And to be honest, I think mentally he was still stuck in, in that 2018 where you had, keeping carried by a lot of those veteran players. Well, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, those kind of guys. But when you have guys like Maxey, Paul Reed, for whatever reason, somehow does not like Paul Reed whatsoever. But it's going to be interesting because I do want to see a bit of a lineup where you could have, if you do decide to move on from Tobias, you can implement both Embiid and Paul Reed, because I think Paul Reed can be that guy. Not say his offense game is not great, but he can give you, like, if Embiid does want to rebound the ball, Paul Reed's that kind of guy that will fight for the rebound. Which I think if I'm Paul Reed, I would have to tell Embiid, look, you're 29 years old, you've been here longer than I have. Try to get off your lazy ass and actually want to rebound the basketball. That's like basketball 101. Now, I can't say because I haven't played the game in years. So it's like a lot of times it's, hell, I mean, actually, it's crazy enough. I actually wanted Dan Burke to actually coach this team, go with a bit of a dark horse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like Dan Burke. And you mentioned Sam Cassell earlier. I love Sam Cassell as well, and I think he is going to be a terrific head coach. The only problem that I have with and Dan Burke is less of a risk because he has some head coaching experience in the past and has been around the NBA a little more. This is a high-pressure job that whatever head coach steps into, that there is expectations from day one. You have the MVP. This is a team that intends on contending for a championship. So there's not that much room for error in who is brought in. So it is a high-stakes hire. It will be a high-pressure situation for the coach. And I totally agree with the idea of thinking outside the box a little more. It feels like so often in the NBA, these same names get recycled and tossed around teams. Like, you have to kind of go outside of things to stumble upon who is the Nick Nurse or who is the Eric Spoelstra, who is this next guy that you give that first opportunity to. And it's difficult to do. It's a balance because you can just as easily strike out with that. But if you don't swing for the fences, you're not going to hit a home run.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, there wasn't, hell, I would not mind having Mike Bolden. I haven't said, some of C6ers fans want to buy multiple holders. I say, as much as I like the idea, but how well is he going to mesh with a guy like Joel Embiid? That's my biggest red flag a little bit. If we fired Dark a lot sooner, the one guy I would have liked was Ime Udoka. Bring his ass back, because let's be real, had an opportunity to actually him or Monty Williams. And it's like, I know a lot of times people say, Doc. I mean, now I'm going to give Doc credit, though. I mean, he has done pretty decently. I'll have to give him that, as much as I hate to say it. But I think his just coaching style just did not fit in this generation of the NBA. Not like it was like pre-2010s, where you have what was the style back then? More like big man aggressive, pretty much. God, NBA's kind of like the league's kind of changed the last handful of years, but it's not like where you had guys like oh God, it's hard to really name names because it feels like 2008 feels like a long fucking time ago. But I mean, with Embiid, and I have to give Jokic a lot of props too. Like I've told people this too. I'm not a huge hater of Jokic. I like what he brings, because let's be real, the old school style way of playing basketball, it's long forgotten. And I did like some of his positive comments. It's like, the fact he said he acknowledges that Embiid should have been in the MVP. I mean, I love that, but I think Embiid or Jokic had a slightly better season, in my honest opinion. But I mean, I have to get where credit is due. The fact that Denver found him at 41st overall, very great value for what he was. And like I said, I mean, nowadays it's kind of hard to build around a big man. And I think, obviously Denver has not done it, but it took them a while to find the complementary pieces, like a Jamal Murray or Michael Porter Jr. or what was another? I can't think of the rest of that damn roster. But it took a while.
Yeah, my bad. And to touch on like the MVP stuff too, obviously there's so much recency bias in the way the NBA is covered and everything. And I do think it is important to remember that like it is a regular season award. So like as much as Joel looks like the big time loser out of being bounced in the second round while Jokic is leading his team to the NBA finals now, it still is a regular season. So and another thing to point out is there's been so much hatred and so much like in the best center debate, the Jokic versus Embiid. It's kind of cool how these two are publicly very like supporting of each other and that there's no bad blood between them. It's much more of like the made up between the supporters, which I do think is cool that they're kind of on the same page there.
And it's like that too. And like you said, I mean, they kind of revolutionized the center position because before you see like guys like Shaq or, and these like old school centers, well, except for Hakeem Olajuwon was kind of mid-revolutionary in his own way with his fancy footwork. And the fact that, like you said, there's no bad blood between them. And yeah, I mean, on paper, and look at face value, yeah, NBA looks like the bigger loser in terms of, but, and I also take into consideration that, yeah, both are good at what they can do. I mean, there's slight differences. Like I said, the only thing that's only different is the passing. Like, I think but I think that's kind of where I think, well, let's be real, European players actually know how to do these stuff a lot better than anybody else. And I feel like, with the Sixers' sake, no, I will say something that was a little bit different was we actually did better with handling the basketball in the last. If you look at the last few postseasons, we sucked we turned the basketball over like so many times. I think there's like a couple games where they had a couple of years ago, we had like 14 or 15 turnovers where we had like 5-6 spread out in the span of 7 games or whatever it was. Or sometimes we had to go one game without having turnovers. So it's like we've gotten better with that, but we need to. Obviously, the perimeter defense it's been non-existent, and I really hate, at times having go to a 2-3 zone most times than not, because that doesn't work a lot of times. I say go with man-to-man, go like 5-on-5 man-to-man pressure. That's what I want to see a coach like, implement something different, and like I said, one of the out-of-box ideas that I actually talked to people about, and I said it was a stretch, give Dawn Staley a call up on the phone, bring her home to Philly. But I don't think she was going to leave, but I thought it just to make a joke out of it.
Yeah, I've seen that circulating around a little bit too. And like I said, like this is such a high pressure coaching gig that I am curious who they go with. I think that's why the signs are pointing toward a more experienced head coach and a guy that has been around, because there are expectations from day one, but there is a lot that needs to be changed. And one of the things when you do look around the NBA now, when you look at this Miami Heat team or the Denver Nuggets or these teams that are successful, even the Celtics, these are groups that have been together for a while and they've seen them build things, add layers year by year. The Sixers have not been that. There's been so much turnover within this organization. There's been
a lot of inconsistencies.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of need that core to build on, and they're going to have to backtrack and find a way to make up for that with this new coach and having some sort of identity as a team, which frankly the Sixers have lacked to some extent. They've won games and had some success for being more talented and having the players, but there hasn't been that clear identity and style of play or anything like that, and I think they've been missing it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back we could have think about our big three, if we could have done the right thing, could have had Tatum and Jaylen Brown, along with Embiid, could be our big three. And whatever, and because like you said too, that's where I think I put a lot more pressure on more the front office than the coaching, anything else. Because Daryl Morey, as much as I would give him a lot of shit for obvious reasons, I thought Daniel House Jr. actually was very fantastic since coming here. Jalen McDaniels, I want to see more out of him going forward. I think there's potential there. I like Jaden Springer too, even though I was one of the few in the minority. I didn't really like it because I don't really follow the game like as deeply as the next person. Like say, where this kid's strengths and weaknesses can be, and the one coach I want to see is try to play to some of these guys' strengths because like I said, you see Milwaukee have done it in 2021. They won a championship by their strengths. Boston, has been won a championship in a while, but they played to their strengths, and we had a lot of success with that. We're all over the place. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, basically. We got to find that right piece in order to get to that point. Because let's be real, it's been 40 long goddamn years. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and it has not been signs of, I guess, encouragement of lately. It feels like there's just one heartbreak
It's
after another and one more disappointing way to exit after another. So they kind of are out of options. These scapegoats are out of the way. There's no more Ben Simmons. There's no more Doc Rivers. There's no more Brett Brown. It's like this is what we got, and the window is just gradually closing more and more. So they have to act fast. They have to find a way. And frankly, if there isn't like a quick retool and finding a way this offseason, this or the next offseason to really find a true core that you can win with, we're looking kind of in the mirror at a potential rebuild. So they don't have a lot of time to dilly around with this and make more mistakes. So it's got to be happening soon.
Yeah, because let's be real, I do not want to go through the process 2.0 ever fucking again. I mean, seeing the days, with, and it's funny because I still have respect a lot with Iguodala, Drew Holiday, Lou Williams, some of the guys that used to play for us, but seeing that, and it's kind of crazy. What kind of rubs me the wrong way. It's like the fact, once we let these guys go, they always somehow find success elsewhere. Lou Williams, always very phenomenal bench player. Just, I think the Hawks kind of figured out what he can do. Drew Holiday, I know he's getting up there in age, hasn't really been the same as of recently. And the thing is too, it's just like, and I think Milwaukee's also kind of finding a way that ever since when Giannis got hurt with that back injury, you could see, it's hard to really, oh yeah, don't get me started, Arku. I really do not want to get started with that. That still freaking rubs me the wrong way of how Isaiah Joe is killing it for the OKC Thunder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's why I hate this front office. When you have potential good young players and for whatever reason, get rid of them for whatever. Hell, even Charles Bassey gets a freaking contract from the San Antonio Spurs. Like it still bugs me of how incompetent this front office really is.
Mm-hmm. And part of that goes back to the turnover of how many different faces have been in here, whether it is the Colangelo era or the Brett Brown running the show, Elton Brand, and now that's still no excuse for the decisions made this year with Daryl Morey. Like Isaiah Joe specifically is exactly who everyone thought he was. He is exactly who he is with the Thunder as he was with the Sixers. He is this young sharpshooter, a guy who can shoot from distance, is not afraid of the moment, has a little self creation, has a little ball handling, and he's a nice kid, a good guy to build around. And to let him walk out the door for free is crazy. Like this isn't even something that you're getting back. That was a very disappointing move for him, and even sugarcoating in the way of like we would like to give him an opportunity to seek a team where he can get minutes. It's like, dude, like why couldn't he play here? Because he absolutely was good enough, and he proved that this year.
It really did, and that brings me to another point where that's still stuck to my point that Doc. It just goes back to Doc Rivers. Like it's still stuck to the point where he wants to play veteran players and not let these young kids develop. And I've always said this example too, like Tyrese Maxey, his rookie year, it wasn't great, but it was a decent rookie year, and especially in the situation he had to be putting himself through, especially with Ben Simmons not wanting to play and all that. I mean, I know how that kind of really all turned out. And since that postseason loss, like his kids already in the gym trying to get better. Like, we need someone more players like Tyrese Maxey are willing to put in the work and hopefully turn this franchise around and may actually be a title contender instead of, well, let's be real, consistent playoff loser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Tyrese Maxey's been nothing but a joy since he's been here. And I will throw in, like, Isaiah Joe was cut from a similar mold with that. I've had a chance, both Maxey and Isaiah Joe have been two of the guys that I've interviewed and talked to the most. And Isaiah Joe, like, I was very disappointed to see him walk and think he is a super bright future. But yeah, Maxey does have that DNA to get better, that desire to improve. And he's made leaps and bounds every single season so far in the NBA. We're talking about a guy who the knock on him coming out of college was that he wasn't a good enough perimeter shooter. To end third in the NBA in 3-point percentage just 2 years into your career is a nuts leap to make. And frankly, like I do think he improved a pretty significant margin as a defender this year. He's always going to be a little undersized in some matchups, and there's stuff that he has to work on still, but I'm not counting out how high his ceiling is. And to me, like, the work ethic has been very refreshing to see.
It really is. I mean, we haven't really seen the days, since days of AI, if I'm going to have to be completely honest. Guys are really want to put in the work and actually let the results or let them show on the court because everything a lot of times, once you get like this, all this like this big contracts that you're just like lackadaisical with it, and a lot of times we've seen that team really not really work out as much. Because I've been seeing some guys that I hopefully I want to see on this roster. Hopefully, guy in particular from Charlotte, Kelly Oubre Jr., who was the one guy I wanted this the couple off seasons. Like we need more perimeter shooting, we need more floor spacing, and that's the. For some reason, I don't know why we can't even cannot get that right. It's with the floor spacing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kelly Oubre Jr. is an interesting name. He's definitely a style of player the Sixers haven't had. He's like 6'9", lefty shooter. He's got a nice stroke, like 20 point per game scorer. So all that's appealing. Not the best defender and a guy who can get lost off ball specifically a lot. But that's still like that mold of player. The true traditional wing is what this team has lacked. Like even looking at it this year, I think one of their downfalls, specifically in the Celtics season, the Celtics, obviously their top two players in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, the Sixers really had no one to guard him. Like Tobias Harris is not that guy. Anthony Melton's only like 6'2" and probably our best perimeter defender. So there really is not that mold of like that perimeter style player. I thought the idea of bringing Jalen McDaniels in was to be that guy, and he really didn't get the opportunity to. So that's definitely a need this offseason. And that kind of style of player, the true 3-and-D style of wing is what I would love to see the Sixers trying to attack.
Oh, and absolutely, because I mean, with the lack of draft picks, and it's funny because I actually brought this up one of my notes on the last Sixers Top podcast. PJ Tucker coming out and say he's already regretting leaving Miami to come to Philly. It's like, now you want to say something about that? Like, geez, that boggles my mind with PJ.
I didn't even see that. That's funny.
But yeah, he did. I think he did say like he did regret. And since how well the Heat have been playing, like he actually said he regrets leaving for Philadelphia. And we had a draft pick. We're not gonna draft in any draft. We haven't really drafted well in a while. I mean, we got lucky with Maxey. I will say that, but throughout the time, I mean, we only had one out of the process years, and it's sad to say. That's Embiid. Yes, I mean, unfortunate things have happened. Missing 2 years with a foot injury. I think we knew that going when he came out to the draft, even though it was kind of funny. I still have that screenshot of ESP's tweet from 2014 when he won a Noah Vonleh over to Joel Embiid. It's like, oh boy, how that aged really badly.
Yeah, and if we want to sugarcoat it and look at it positively, I mean, Jaden Springer is basically our rookie this year. Is a combination of him continuing to develop and Doc Rivers being out that he will have more of an opportunity. I do think he's going to be a guy that makes an impact this year, and I like his skill set a lot. I think he might be the best perimeter defender on the Sixers already. He's a little bit Jimmy Butler-like, and I don't think he's nearly as good of a player as Jimmy Butler, but that style of player in terms of physical
and the potential's there to be what Jimmy Butler, because I mean, I think he's got the height to do so, and I've seen this kid can shoot. I mean, even get this like really fine tuned of his shooting. It'll be nice to have Springer and Maxey as the 1 and 2. Maybe have Embiid, still have Embiid at the 5. Maybe Paul Reed at the 4 because I think he's got the size of a power forward. But the 3 guard is interesting because I guess if you do go after Oubre, but do you even put him at the 3? Because I don't think he's a small forward.
Yeah, I mean, Tobias is still around. I don't see them benching PJ Tucker. Tucker will definitely get the starting minutes. As much as I would love the B-ball Paul to be an option, I can't see him making a starting leap at this point. He's still backup center. Going to be his primary role. I definitely think they should experiment with the Paul Reed and Joel Embiid lineups on the floor because, like you said, the rebounding, the energy that he brings, that's needed on this team. It's a jolt of life that needs to be there. I'm curious if D'Anthony Melton stays in the starting lineup too. So there's a lot of moving parts. I think Daryl Morey's got a lot of work to do, and we'll see.
Yeah, especially with limited cap space we have, because I mean, we still got to pay. We still got to pay not Joel, but we gave him that Supermax. We still got to pay Tobias 1 more year, unless we can find a way to use him as like a bargaining chip to whoever wants to pick up that contract. Because then again, Morris knows how to move off bad contracts. So we've seen that when he first came in, moved off with Al Horford. The first move he did was moving off that Al Horford contract to, was it Oklahoma City, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, for Danny Green.
Oh, yeah. And Danny, I actually didn't mind Danny Green, but just, I know he's getting up there in age, but just like hasn't really been what I expected. But he has had his moment. Sure, I'll give him that. But I just feel like Danny Green, and the fact we even flipped him and a 23rd overall pick for D'Anthony Melton, which I thought that wasn't even going to be possible, is move on from Danny Green. But then again, he's always on an expiring contract, so to kind of make more sense that way. But and it's a lot of times too when I see like other GMs actually know how to do the right moves. It's like it makes me shake my head sometimes. It's like, what the hell? Like, what the hell's going on with us? Like, it feels like we're playing catch up for the rest of these teams. Like I said, OKC with Sam Presti. I mean, the dude's got fucking draft picks for days, and they want. It's crazy to say, but like I said, it's going to be interesting of what the Sixers want to do. If they do, if they somehow trade Tobias Harris, I'll be freaking shocked if they would. Because I've been seeing a lot of reports and rumors. I say they might use it as a bargaining chip with him, like a trade chip. And I really do think, I mean, as much as I've made this NFL comparison, and then I've talked to a lot of Cowboys fans. We're pretty much the Cowboys of basketball. We're always somehow good in the regular season, but come playoff time, we always find a way to come up small. It's, it's kind of how I looked at it. Like I don't like I've told people this. I don't really hate the Sixers. It's always I hate being disappointed year in and year goddamn out. Mm-hmm. Like this year, I thought they were going to drive me to drink because it's like what the hell? Like especially the way how we went out with that. It's like, oh boy, it's disappointing. And and that too, and Tobias, we're getting him a chunk this last year. I think 40 something odd million. I think it is last year.
40 straight up.
Jesus Christ.
The thing I will say, and I think this is by far the most likely it is that Tobias will be traded, and it is the point where it's flipped to where I would regard him as like a positive asset in trades. And the only reason I say that is in this cap space oriented world that we live in, that now becomes like an appealing from an opposing GM standpoint where you can look at it and say, okay, I'll take a year of Tobias Harris and then free up all that cap space after the fact.
Because I don't think Tobias is a bad player by any stretch of the means, but sometimes he's just inconsistent. Mm-hmm. But then again, though, I think some teams could use a guy like Tobias. I want to see Oklahoma City because they got a nice formula going over there. I would probably say not. Where do you even trade him to though? That's going to be my biggest question. Like I know Houston. Houston would never do anything with us because he still despised Daryl Morey for whatever reason. They moved. I don't think Detroit is the option. I don't know. That's really tough to really imagine. Where do you move him? Like if you do trade him, where do you want to send him to?
Yeah, Orlando's been a team I've thought a lot about in some sort of Jonathan Isaac trade.
Because Orlando's got a lot of too many damn point guards on their roster. They got way too many guard play.
And there's still a lot to like about Tobias. Like he's a good character guy, good locker room guy. So I can see the appeal of adding him to like a young core. And like I said, it's going to be a team looking for cap relief where you can take this guy's contract for a season and then that's $40 million of cap out the window.
Out the window and give the Sixers a little bit more time to actually work their magic because even though Elton Brand, I remember this like it's yesterday too when we first brought him in. It's like, look, the dude was decent with us. Wasn't great, but as an executive, oh boy, that was yikes. That really he handcuffed us for a few years. I mean, Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris. Honestly, that I would have given that max to Jimmy Butler anyways. It's I know that's kind of in the past, but we're still kind of feeling the effects from that. Still, that was what 2018.
Yeah, that was right after the Colangelo era. And the hardest part about that is there's just so many voices in that room that it's tough everyone wants to stick up and say they made the good decisions and not admit when they made the bad ones. So that was when Brett Brown was involved, ownership was involved. And it was a weird time in Sixers. And to be honest, if you want to point at where the downfall of this Sixers franchise it was during that offseason. It was during that moment and those missed decision and mismanaged assets and all that. So it is disappointing. We can always circle back to that. And yeah, that one hurts for sure.
Oh yeah. And if we somehow do say trade him, I mean, if you do want to experiment, the one guy I do want to see, there's a possibility if you want to get a backup big, give me Bol. You need more length or height and length, because we haven't really had a backup big in since Andre Drummond for quite a while, even though that still sucks because I still miss the damn dude. And same with Seth Curry. I mean, that if he had that with Jimmy Butler, Tyrese Maxey, that's a champion. I guess you can make the argument that's a championship team right in your palm of your hands with Joel Embiid at the 5. It's well. Then again, what bench will we even have? That's oh boy, I forgot about that because the bench has been awful the last few years. But then again, though, I think this year's bench wasn't terrible, but wasn't great. It was like real middle of the pack, I would say, in terms of what you had. D'Anthony Melton coming off the bench, Shake Milton, Paul Reed. Oh God, there's who else is already? That's
your guy Daniel House.
Daniel House. I thought was a decent pickup. Let's be real, better. Actually played better in that jersey than Simmons. I will admit. But I really do want to see this team like kind of retool the bench because I really do think we got some really nice pieces for this bench, but we just need a better supporting because the supporting cast, that's real. It's kind of been hard to really get right because if you think about it, I mean, like I said, and going back to what I said, you had an opportunity to get either Tatum and Brown at 16 and 17 to have to form that big three. Unfortunately, had to still deal with Korkmaz saying, "Can we just please move on from him?" Because holy crap, because it's kind of hard to, well, I don't know, but I don't really ask for much, but it's just like, can we at least do something to at least have an opportunity to be no, we're always consistently good in the regular season, but we need more better options in the postseason when we really need it the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be an offseason of change. I think that Daryl Morey this is why he was brought in, to be that guy. And it's now time to earn that paycheck and find a way to get creative, think outside the box, and build this team into a winner. This really was a season where he thought he did it. He had the gang back together, the Rockets reunited, and that squad. That didn't work. So now it's time to run it back, figure out something else, and get a trade that can make things happen. I do think it's likely Tobias is traded. The James Harden piece is still a major one. I don't think it's as said and done that he heads to Houston as I think the perception of. I still think they're going to do some contractual dance and see how things shake out.
Try to do a sign and trade with him.
Yeah, that would be fine too.
I've seen that's more like a more realistic option because we've seen it. Hell, if there's another guy if you want to go after, give me D'Angelo Russell. I mean, he may be a nice, could be that I would say in a point guard.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, it's getting anything's better than letting him walk for free. So if you can find a way to sign it, make a sign and trade it, and do that,
or try to do like a multi-team signing trade basically, and try to at least acquire more assets. Because let's be real, we don't even have a first-round draft pick till 2024, and it's kind of concerning. Knowing that, look at this draft class, it's like, come on now, it's like a really nice deep draft class like we could have had, and I've always, I've actually called crazy because I want to see Matt McClung actually be an extra bench piece. I mean, let's be able to do revitalize the dunk contest, which let's be no superstar actually wanted to participate. Obviously the Blue Coats. I'm trying to think who else we had. I mean, we have some pretty decent down in the G League. Just I want to see some of these young kids at least get younger and see what we can do. And kind of like retool a little bit. In some areas, like the bench, mostly in particular. And it's going to be interesting too, like whoever the next head coach is, like what's the coaching staff going to be looking like? Are we going to lose guys like Dan Burke, Dave Yorger, Sam Cassell? Because usually Sam Cassell always goes wherever Doc Rivers goes. I mean, from his time with the Clippers to here. And now we're seeing the Suns, well, I know a couple Suns fans personally, and yeah, they're kind of losing their mind. Well, because Doc Rivers now is actually a finalist. It's like, oh, good Lord. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of golf courses out there for Doc Rivers, so I can see him being just happy. But yeah, I mean, to talk about the young talent, like getting a new coach is the biggest step in that. Like that was probably the biggest downfall to Doc Rivers' style and coaching was that there was just no desire to work in the young talent or no innovation and to see what these guys got. And that's just not an effective way to run an organization short term or long term, because we saw these guys kind of being burnt out by the end of the regular season because there was the no breaks or no spells for these young guys to run. And then in the long term, it's important for them development to get those reps, to get those opportunities to see what they can do. So I do think having some new blood from the coaching standpoint is going to help change that a lot and see what these guys are really capable of.
And because, I mean, like I said, with that, because and I go back to my point, because he was so stuck in his old ways of what the NBA used to be. It's like since like pre 2010s, like you rely on a lot of veterans, even though, like I said, that Celtics team, he was pretty much carried to a championship. And the fact, it took it, and we had to bring scream at the, bring him, yell on social media and like shit like that and scream at the crowds. Like I said, play like Paul Reed. And you had to do it, and dude has not played any regular season minutes until you had to put him in the postseason, and obviously kind of sucked at it. And it's like, oh boy, it's like, and that's why you have a lot of these young players, and especially Jaden Springer. I'd actually want to see experiment with him at the one, be like that point guard to be with Maxey a little bit, and just see what happens.
Yeah, and I want to see what Maxey, if he can develop as a passer. That's something I'm keeping my eye out, because I don't think we figured out exactly what his NBA fit or NBA role is. He definitely doesn't have the playmaking ability at this point in time, but like I mentioned, like he's taken significant strides forward every offseason in the NBA. So if he can grow as a passer and become a legitimate point guard, and I don't think that's that unrealistic, like we've seen him develop areas, then that kind of changes the picture for the Sixers. Or maybe he is just this microwave scorer, this great shooter, this more of a spark game-changing scorer. Kind of the role for Tyrese Maxey this past year specifically, and even looking back, he just needed like that game-changing burst in the game where he went on a run, scored like 3 consecutive baskets, and kind of changed the outlook of the game. Especially if James Harden's gone, he's going to be relied on for a lot more than that next year.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, I think that playmaking ability, I think, is going to come in time, depending who that coach is going to be, and actually can learn and can show him like how to take over as a floor general. Because I've seen a lot of media actually kind of praising how good Tyrese Maxey can be, because he's got especially with the high ceiling that he has. I really do want to see if he can develop that playmaking ability as most people want to see. I think we could probably have our point guard right then and there. The dude's a nice 3-point shooter, can finish at the basket. It's you got all the tools, and the only one tool he's missing, like I said, is that playmaking ability. If he can have that to his game, you got a complete player, and Maxey's already a complete player at that point.
Yeah, very possible. And there's a lot in the pick and roll scenes. Like we saw the 2-man game between James Harden and Joel Embiid pretty much hammered home last year. There's different elements that you can add with Maxey. Like he has that burst to get downhill and get to the basket in a way that James Harden doesn't. There's different things that you can bring in, different looks that you can create with him that are a little bit different stylistically, and that I think can produce more success. So I want to see more of that. He definitely needs to have a bigger role. And I think, honestly, the decision-making on the coach to be brought in should be very reliant on what can juice out the best in him. Because you think about like a high-paced offense, such as like the Mike D'Antoni, like that could be something very appealing to Tyrese Maxey. So he's got to be fresh in the minds of when they make this decision that it benefits Maxey.
Yeah, and not just Maxey, pretty much to some of these guys who they want to bring in the offseason. And if you can get that to mesh, I mean, I think there'll be hopefully a nice step in the right direction in figuring this stuff out. Because it's kind of hard. It's like we've been so mixing and matching a lot of players over the years. I mean, from Simmons to Curry, even you go to like years past. I mean, even though sometimes we whiffed on some, but we just did a lot of mixing and matching. And sometimes it's like we have to throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks. And like I said, I think that it comes down to who the coach wants to, or what the style of the coaching that needs to do it. I mean, I think this team, if you get it all right, I think this team can win 50, 60 something odd games, and hopefully finally end this goddamn drought and finally get a championship on Broadway, on Broad Street, actually.
Yeah, I mean, there's still, like, as much as down in the dumps as we all feel, and this is one of the things Daryl Morey pointed out in the press conference, like, there's 25 teams around the NBA that would love to be in the Sixers position. Like, I mean, they have the reigning MVP of the league. They have a young hot guard in Tyrese Maxey, and they've got some pieces that are also useful around the edges. So there is, as much as it feels doom and gloom and hopeless, there's still a lot that you can pick up from the ashes and piece things together here. This is absolutely a crucial offseason to make sure that happens. But yeah, like there's plenty of teams that would envy being in their spot, and the Sixers just got to take advantage and find a way to dig out of it.
Absolutely. But Sean, man, thanks for coming on and talking some Sixers basketball. But before we get out of here, where can they find you?
Yeah, appreciate you for having me once again, and check out Pick Swap Media for all my stuff. I dropped a Sixers podcast yesterday, and some other stuff on there, some Eagles content as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Sean_Barnard1, or also on Fox Sports The Gambler 1025 on the radio, their YouTube channel as well. And then, that just about there. My written works on Philly Sports Network as well.
That being said, Sean, man, We got to start doing these more often. And hope you have a good night, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thanks again.
No problem.